How old were we when we first met?
Well, I think I was 16 and you were probably 18.
And, well, tell me the story about that day. It was a night, I guess, wasn't it, that we met?
It was in the evening, and our school didn't have a gym. We were out in the country, and your school had a gym, so we went up there to practice. And after the girls' game, you came down, and my friend and I were sitting there, and she knew you, but I didn't. She said, "Here comes Harold Offit, let's trip him." So we pretended we tripped you, and you sit down, and I knew your sister, but I didn't know you. So, yeah, I guess that you and your friend talked afterwards, and he was taking a neighbor girl, and he said to you, "Do you want to ask her to go get a date with her?" So that's what happened, and the four of us went to a movie, and I thought it was a great evening. And
Oh, that was, I was a little hesitant to do that when he said, I told Frank, my friend, he was a classmate, that, I think she's so good looking that I think she'll already have a boyfriend. He says, "Well, ask her anyway." I did, and then she said yes. That started the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nowadays, kids have constant communication with each other. And how the heck did we keep track of each other?
Well, you had a telephone, and everybody didn't have a telephone. I think we did have one, but it was usually you just showed up. We didn't have any communication. One time I know when we were dating, the snow was so deep you rode a horse down to see me.
Yeah, I remember that.
My dad put it in the barn and put a blanket on it, and things were different than they are now. You don't have all that communication you had back.
Yeah. Did you know that the little money I did have, I made by raising chickens?
I don't know that I knew you lived on a farm, but I don't know that that's the way you earned your money, was raising chickens. But
well, my parents kept about 3,000 laying hens, so they separated the roosters from the hens. Well, you could buy those for 5 cents a piece. There wasn't much market for them, so I'd get those. And my dad gave me a space in the barn. I built a pen, and I fed them there until they were cut up to 3 pounds. And then I had a fellow in Pittsburgh that would buy them. I guess we went quite a little spell before I proposed to you. It took me a while to get nerve up again. I guess the most difficult thing was to go to talk to your parents, which was the custom in those days, to see if they'd be okay if I... So they gave me their blessings. So then I had to figure out how am I going to do this. So I did buy a ring with some of my chicken money. I had $75. So I went into a jewelry store that the owner was a friend of my grandfather's, and I picked out a ring. Somehow or another, they tried to convince you I was going to get you a
cedar chest.
Cedar chest, because they were popular at that time. So we went to a movie, and I pretended there was a cedar chest in the trunk of the car. So when we got back to your home, I said, well, I'll bring that in after a while. So I went in, and that's when I proposed to you. And
probably nobody knows today what a cedar chest is.
But probably right.
They called them hope chests. You got this big chest, and you made quilts, and you embroidered pillowcases and things, and that's where you stored them. I never got a cedar chest. We stored them in something else.
I spent all my money on the ring. We had a wedding.
A wedding?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
And we didn't know much about that.
Well, our minister didn't know much about it either, because back then there weren't church weddings. You either went to the justice of the peace or you had a home wedding. Most people had a home wedding. And our church was a little old church out in the country, and my sister was the first one to have a wedding there. And ours was the second. And when I look back at the way weddings are today, it wasn't anything very big. So things were a lot different than they are now. But then we went up to the Village Inn, which was the big dining area at the time, and we had a wedding dinner there.
And what amazed me was when I think back what it cost, $1 a plate.
$1 a plate, and we thought that was pretty expensive.
And they got the works.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful dinner.
Well, back then, the big thing was the bride and groom tried to make their exit without everybody stood outside waiting for the bride and groom to come out, and they threw rice, and so we had the owner of the restaurant parked his car out in the back somewhere, and he had our car parked up on another area. And so we thought we were so smart that we would avoid all this outside, so we went out the back door, and he took us over to his car, and everybody's standing out front waiting. So we go up and get our car, and we start on our honeymoon, and we had changed our clothes to traveling clothes and took our wedding clothes off. So we started on our trip, and he was a very dutiful husband at that time. He said, "I'll let you take my wallet," because I guess he didn't want to sit on it. And so he went to get his wallet, and he didn't have a wallet. He left it in the other pair of trousers. So we had to swallow our pride and go back to the restaurant. Then we had to go to my house and get his wallet before we could leave on our honeymoon. We went to the World's Fair, a couple of farm kids going to a big city. I don't know how we managed.
It was in New York City. Someone might ask what relationship advice we would give to young couples today. Do you have any words of wisdom?
Well, you have to give and take, and you don't just say, "I'm going to pack up and leave" when something doesn't go right. And if the things didn't go well, you just got over it and went on for the next day. And